Hey everybody, Nullface here in Eternal Evolution. We've got Riserris' Awakening that released today, and wanted to kind of go through the impact it's had, what I've done with the hero, how I've decided to gear her, and some of the data behind the choices I've made. Go through the tests and show you how it's looking. I guess the TLDR, it's good. Awaken 3 provides a nice boost. And Awaken 5, where I'm choosing to leave her for right now, has an even more significant impact. Both good. Riserris is an interesting hero. She's a big force multiplier for hunters, has the attack speed boost, has the true damage on hit. Let's see, those are part of this one here, right? All allied heroes basic attack, trigger special effect, deals true damage. Everybody gets an AS boost, hunters get double. Really great. She lets you hit those attack speed caps that hunters have for their abilities much more easily without having to make the huge investments into their gear. Her own attack speed cap is very high. I think it's actually 800 attack speed. And the Awakening helps with that a little bit too. So look here, Everlasting Nightmare increases Riserris' attack by 300. So that's 500 from her bonuses, and the Awakening makes it so here, actually doesn't say on this one, it makes it so that this is up the whole time. And this new one here, if we look at additional attack every 200 for 4, yeah, so we do want the 800 attack speed, and that now means that she's able to have that up the whole time, which is great. Now that isn't just a skill that is up part of the time, the consistency helps a lot, and she has that 800 AS the whole time, so her damage definitely went up. I was always a little confused about her and why she didn't do damage before, as anyone who's tried to get Riserris to do damage knows she doesn't, and I could never figure out why. It's even more confusing if you look in her base stats and realize that 83.1 thousand, that is the highest base attack that I've found anywhere in any of the heroes. Incidentally, that does mean she will steal the Purin buff from pretty much everybody else now. Rebecca is not going to get that anymore, so it's an indirect nerf to Rebecca's damage, because you're always going to want to use them together, but Rebecca's not going to get that buff anymore. I think my Rebecca in her Immortal gear is around 126k attack, 26.5 I think. So Riserris so far ahead. I had to completely destroy her gear to get her below that, but the difference wasn't as large as I thought it would be. In the end, decided to not try and fix the buff that way, so we'll just let it fall where it will, and enjoy the fact that Riserris does a little bit more damage now. Still doesn't do Rebecca or Viserys levels, but she does enable them to do more. So it's a good awakening. If we look through the equipment now, moving on to that. As you've noticed, I like Fade Out, at least on heroes that revive, so all 3 of them so far. Samael, Viserys, and now Riserris. All 3 of them make good use of Fade Out, and the other reason, besides just it being a pretty solid set on heroes with revives, that I like it on Riserris, is if we look at her new passive, Everlasting Nightmare, the duration is extended for the entire fight. That's where they put it. Okay, it's over there. And then after the first resurrection, increases her attack by 30%, which should mean that everybody now deals more true damage because their attack is higher. So it's somewhat multiplicative, and having Fade Out in there ensures that you're going to get that in the fight. Should be boosting everybody's damage just after, by the sheer fact that the set will kill her. She pops back up, boom. Everybody gets a little bit more true damage. I also did some testing. I'll pull those numbers up in a second here, and Fade Out does just come ahead of the Unleashed set in the tests that I've run. I need to do more with Unleashed to see what's actually up with that set. If it's just not performing like it should, if the effect isn't there, it's just not really impressed me a ton. It is still the best one on Rebecca, not going to dispute that, but she also doesn't have any other options. Gluttony isn't something you can immortal. I haven't tried Burst. It's potentially Burst. I haven't tried that one yet, but she needs the attack speed from somewhere too. So if you go with a burst set, you'll have to put in some Zephyr to get her up to, I think it's 200 attack speed, or run attack speed boots, so you're losing the attack there. So I think the Unleash set is really her only viable option, but for Riserris, since we had a couple options, I did test a few of them. I'll pull up the spreadsheet here. Also, important to note, in the last patch, or today's patch, they did fix Riserris and Marauder, so he's able to use that now, which is fantastic. Ran a couple of tests there as well, and we'll look at that data at the end here. Spreadsheet, 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 always with the spreadsheets. I think I ran, let's see, this is 11 rows, 5 tests apiece, so 55 separate 1-minute tests today to gather some data behind this, because that's just kind of how I like to run things. I want to run the comparisons and see. I would run more, but that's already a pretty significant time investment. And, it's like most everyone else, I've got other things going on too. Unfortunately, I can't spend all my time testing EE stuff. But if we start looking at the baseline here, there were a couple zones I tried. Really, though, I ended up doing most of my testing in Exotic Pandemonium Stage 11. The one thing I tried to control a little bit was where Perrin's energy buff, energy and ultimate damage buff went. Sometimes it worked. You can see here this stage in A3, she did get it. She had it there the whole time because I'd taken out Rebecca for that stage. Other times she didn't have it depending on who was in there. In this case, because of the base attack that I previously mentioned just being so much higher than all the rest, the only hero I have that has more attack than she does is Coraxia. So I would actually put in Cora to try and minimize the amount of time that Riserris would get the buff. It kind of worked, but it kind of didn't because Pandy just kills Cora really, really quickly. So when she would die, the buff would sometimes go on Riserris. It minimized the impact, but it was still there. I can't completely remove that without removing Perrin, and that just kind of breaks most of the tests because I want to do it in a team where I'll actually be using her. So try to minimize that. It still happens, but yeah, is what it is. So if we look at the Forbidden Mist numbers and Exotic Pandy, started out in her Gluttony Zephyr that she's been in for quite a long time. Got to about 180 million in Forbidden Mist, and Pandy was around 112. Because I'm going to focus more on the Pandy stuff, because I didn't rerun Forbidden Mist with her at the end yet. I then threw her in Fade Out and Zephyr, just to get a baseline for that. And the Pandemonium test, it was better, right? Went from 112 up to 146, so decent increase across the average there. So Fade Out, Immortal Fade Out, does have much better stats. That's going to be a big part of this too, is just the additional attack that comes from the Immortal set. It will do more damage as well. The self-damage pushes alts out faster, helps with that. So a few contributing factors there. From here on out though, whenever you see the Semi gear base, that'll be the same set. So here we went. We did try Unleashed. Disappointing. Just not as good. Like I said, I need to do more on Unleashed to try and figure out what's up there. Then the real comparison started. So what does the Awakening do in terms of damage increase? So her A3 was a 150% increase over her base. Now that does include the additional stats from Awaken level 1, the damage amp from Awaken level 2, and then that is A3 is her new passive, the Everlasting Nightmare duration for the whole fight, and the first Resurrection attack increase. So that's pretty big. This is actually the biggest one. If you look ahead just a little bit, a couple of rows here. Next one is 276% damage increase over Awaken 0 or base. This was 156. So if you're on kind of a low spender or free to play and just want to slowly progress her, A3 still gets you a big boost and is probably worth it. I would definitely get her up to that level if you can. She's going to be in your hunter teams. She's worth maximizing as much as you can. So this one was a very substantial increase. And then sticking with the Fade Out Zephyr again, giving her the Purin buff increased her damage by about 15%. So decent. Nothing crazy, but pretty decent. A5, it went quite a bit higher. This is when she started to get Purin's buff a little bit on and off. So looking at this versus the, again, base level, 276%. So now she's starting to do some reasonable damage. Still not Rebecca or Riserris, but good damage. She's contributing more. It feels better having her on the team now. So that was where I stopped. I think if you wanted to keep going and take her up even higher, she gets some crit rate. She does get a little bit more bonus at Awakened 7 as well. Not much for PvE though, and that's where I'm primarily using her. Awakened 8 in terms of PvE doesn't have much because the boss types aren't that applicable. Except for the Endless Battle boss, which is an insectoid, so you could get more insectoid damage and she would do better there. To me, not worth it. I'd rather save my resources for the next big hero that comes out that really helps. But if you want to take her up, you can definitely get some benefit out of that too. And then just for kind of a comparison, even if you don't give her any different gear than what I started with, the Awakening itself still 209% more. So it doubled her damage from base just going through the Awaken 5. This is Riserris A5. Oops. So still really good there, even if you don't start changing out her gear. But you can also kind of see the impact that the gear has, right? Like this difference here is massive, and that's entirely gear. So that helps a lot too. While we're here, since Riserris got fixed, I ran a couple more tests here. Fade Out Zephyr versus Marauder Zephyr. Fade Out did do more damage, a little bit, not a lot. It did do a little bit more damage, and it was also a little bit more consistent. There's more variation in the Marauder set. I stole Caraxia's gear for this one. But it's not a huge difference. It's about less than 10%, and the survivability he gets from Marauder is absolutely massive. You'll see that in the video here in just a minute when we go back and actually do the Pandy 11. But highly recommend either of these. I'm probably going to end up putting him in Marauder and what I did is I gave his Fade Out gear to Riserris. I'm not necessarily rolling in Immortal gear mats, so I got to be a little conservative with what that is. So that's the data. Head back over to the game here and take a look at what the Pandemonium level 11 looks like with this new team, with the new Riserris and a few other upgrades. It's pretty smooth for a fight that used to be really, really clutch and very tough. Really nice now. So I'll have a look at that. So that was a really, really simple, straightforward fight now. And I did do a couple variations because as you saw, I had both a really good Marauder set on Riserris as well as the new Hunter Proto, which I overspent to get because it let me beat it without losing Riserris last week. And then this week Riserris comes out with Awakening and they fix Marauder and everything's great. But That's what I get for being over anxious. Uh, anyway, neither of those are required. He was able to tank the boss. He just had to use his revive in that scenario. So with the Marauder fix, he's a fantastic tank here, even if you don't have crazy good gear or the proto. Uh, Still awesome, but yeah, his damage is great. Riserris' damage is now about half of Rebecca's, where before it was closer to 10-20%. So massive improvements there. The gear worked well. Arcadia still, despite being a new hero, needs an awakening already or a buff. She just needs a buff. She's not great in the scenario, but she helps Viserys with damage reduction passive, so it seemed worth doing. Anyway, most of my work has been around making this fight a little bit easier. I'll be anxious to try it on Pandemonium 12 once I get there. I can't one-shot anything in 12 yet, but this makes it a lot easier to one-shot this guy in 11, so I'll be very interested to try this team in 12 and see how that goes when I get there, probably over the weekend. So I hope this was helpful. I hope my thought process and breakdown was useful. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. I'm recording this a little bit late at night for me, so I tend to ramble a bit. So I'll leave this off here before I go on yet another tangent. Thank you for watching and take care.